the music theory lady. Welcome back, guys. Today we're talking about staff. Staff is 5 lines and 4 spaces. When you have multiple lines of staff, it's called staves, S-T-A-V-E-S, staves. We're also going to talk about clefs today because clefs are what tell you what part or what pitches those lines of staff and those spaces of staff are supposed to sound like. So the first clef is G clef. So we're going to draw that with a big dot, pull a big hook up from that dot, make a capital D at the top, and then swirl it around across that line one more time. This may look familiar to you. A lot of you guys call this treble clef, but technically when it's off of the staff, it's called G clef. And the reason that it's called G clef is because when you place it on the staff, that's what determines where the pitches are going to lie. If I place it here with a dot underneath the staff, I pull the hook up, make that capital letter D so it crosses at the 4th line, circle down to the 1st line, and then across that 2nd line one more time. When I place it here, the way that I wrapped around that 2nd line, that's showing that that line will be G. And when G is there on the staff, it's telling you that these notes are actually going to be higher in pitch. And these higher pitch notes in music are what we call treble. So this is actually the treble clef when it's placed on the staff. You could technically place that clef anywhere on the staff, and wherever it goes, that G will follow. So if I wanted it to show lower pitches on the staff, I could put that treble clef higher, and it would put more access to lower pitches on the staff. Then we need to know the other lines and spaces of this clef. So if I go up on the staff, I'm going up alphabetically. If I go down on the staff, I'm going backwards alphabetically. And I'm going to go every line in every space. So the next space up from G is A. The next line up from that is B, C, D, E, F, and so on. And then when I go down from G, this first space would be F because we're going backwards alphabetically, and then E on that first line. So you can either memorize it like this and just know every single line in space, or you can know where G is and figure it out off of that. But for our class, you're going to have to know them a lot faster. So we have a few mnemonic devices to help you with that. One way is we memorize the lines of the treble clef. So the lines are, first line is E, then G, B, D, and F. There's a couple different ways you can memorize that. We typically tend to use an acronym, which is every good boy does fine. So E, G, B, D, F, every good boy does fine. The spaces are F, A, C, E, and luckily we don't need an acronym here because it already spells face. So the lines of treble clef are E, G, B, D, F, or every good boy does fine, and the spaces are face. You want to memorize these as quickly as you can before you move on in the units. We're also going to learn today about F clef. F clef is drawn with a large dot and then a hook pulled out of it that almost looks like an ear, and then 2 dots out to the side. This is called F clef. Again, just like G clef, it shows you where F is on the staff. F clef on the staff gets placed with the large dot on the 4th line. Then you pull the ear up to the 5th line and down. It usually resides somewhere around the 2nd line or the 1st space. And then the 2 dots on the side go into the 3rd and 4th spaces. And what this is doing is showing you where F is. This large dot is on the F line, and these 2 dots are outlining that F line. So it's very clearly telling you that 4th line is supposed to be F. And when F is on that line, then we can transition the name from F clef to bass clef. Not bass, bass is how that's pronounced, so bass clef. And once again, you can go through and figure out all the lines and spaces. Going up on the staff, we go alphabetically forward. Going down on the staff, we go backwards alphabetically. So up from F would be G, and then A, and backwards from F would be E, D, C, B, A, and G. And again, you can either just memorize where F is and figure out everything else off of that, but that makes things quite a bit slower, and we need to be quick with this to be able to move on. So we're going to learn these with a mnemonic device as well. Lines of this are G, B, D, F, and A. I've heard people say good boys do fine always. I typically don't teach that just because I have a lot of students who get confused between every good boy does fine and good boys do fine always. So instead, I do one that I learned a while ago when I taught choir, and that is good basses, date, fine, altos. It's just a little silly, and it always helped my students to remember. And then the spaces are A, C, E, G, and that would be all cows eat grass. I've also heard all cars eat gas. There's a lot of different things that you can assign to these letters, and as long as you can memorize it, that's really all that matters. So you'll need to know treble clef and bass clef notes for sure. But we're also going to learn about another clef. The other clef we're going to learn about today is called C clef. And just like G clef and F clef, it's going to show you where its name is on the staff. So it's going to show you where C is. C clef, normally we draw with 2 lines, or what we call a double bar line. And then you're going to have sort of an elongated 3. This is a shorthand drawing of it. The actual technical drawing of it that you'll see in notation software programs is a lot more detailed, but we don't typically get that detailed. I just draw it with a 3. And this again is C clef. Here's a picture of C clef. C clef on the staff actually goes in multiple different locations, but we're going to just learn 2 of those locations. The first one is to put C clef right here in the center of the staff to where the center of that 3 lines up with that 3rd line. So now it's showing you that that 3rd line is C. This is called alto clef. But we have to know another location of C clef on the staff, and that is when the bottom of it is placed on the 2nd line and the C is on the 4th line. This location is called tenor clef. So if you're familiar with the different registers of voice or registers of instruments, you may know that alto is typically above treble clef. But I have a lot of students who get these confused because they see this clef sitting higher on the staff and assume that it is the higher pitched clef. But that's not true. If these are both the exact same C pitch, this clef technically has access to higher pitches on the staff than the tenor clef does, and tenor clef has access to lower pitches on the staff than the alto clef does. So technically tenor clef is a lower clef than alto clef. We don't use these much, but you do have to be able to read notes in them. Typically, there are instruments like viola, and I believe sometimes bassoon and euphonium use C clef to read in, but we usually don't in this class. We do a little bit here and there. You need to be able to read it when you're looking at full scores, but we typically deal mostly in treble and bass clef. So that's going to be really the focus of your learning over these next few days, is making sure you can memorize those treble and bass clef notes. But make sure you do at least know how to find your way around alto and tenor clef by knowing where those C's are and knowing to go up when you're going alphabetical and down when you're going backwards alphabetically.